Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is Mr. Hurricane, and today we're talking Madden 24 franchise mode. EA has put out some info detailing some new stuff coming to franchise, and some of this honestly looks really cool, and a lot of it I'm really excited to have as part of franchise mode. Other stuff, I'm not sure how deep it's going to go and how much of a difference it's really going to make, but let's go through the information. I'm looking at the EA Gridiron notes, but I've also watched the franchise deep dive trailer a couple times. I've taken some notes on that. And keep in mind, I have not played the beta. I might have some questions that if I had played it, I could answer. But let's get into the information nonetheless. And one of the big things they're talking about this year is the return of training camp and the mini camp drills that we used to have back in the PlayStation 2 era. So on one hand, it's cool to have this stuff back in the game. On the other hand, it's been, a long time since these have been in the game, and it's really just playing at that nostalgia rather than actually being innovative. But it's good to have this feature, I'd say. Training camp was fun. You could take a few players in particular you wanted to train and actually get a chance to play out drills with them. It was kind of like having focus players, but actually getting a chance to get into the action with them and having how well you did dictate their development for at least those drills. So there are a bunch of drills they've talked about being in this game, and some of the returning, like target passing and rushing attack. And based on the bronze, silver, or gold rewards, you're able to get XP for those players, skill points, so upgrades, and then rookie snaps, which I imagine is just like for those players who have hidden development. You'll be able to add on snaps and become closer to finding out their actual development. At launch, we're going to have the following mini games: target passing, pass skeleton, and outmanned for quarterbacks, rushing attack for halfbacks and fullbacks, wide receiver battle for receivers and tight ends, and then a version of that that's just red zone attack, trench battle, the long haul for defensive linemen and linebackers, chase and tackle for linebackers, DB battle, and then DB battle red zone defense for defensive backs, field goal accuracy, and coffin corner for the special teamers. They reference this in the article, but there are no drills available for offensive linemen, and I think that's a big missed opportunity because there are already so few ways to upgrade your offensive linemen. You're basically drafting them, hoping they have a hidden development trait because it's difficult to put them on the fast track to develop without that hidden development, and not having even something for training camp, I think, is a big missed opportunity. Offensive linemen primarily develop in Madden just based on their snap counts. They are a position that gets more XP for the snaps they play than other positions, especially on offense. And I think it's long past due for the game to recognize, win-loss rate and pass protection and being able to grade out things in the running game at the same time and be able to earn development based on actual play. But I guess that's a different topic. You can play out these training camp drills, or you can choose to simulate them, and then you'll get randomized results with weighted chances for either gold, silver, or bronze in the same fashion that is done for the CPU. The one thing I do take away from there is that the CPU is going to have this same thing done, and hopefully the logic that determines who they're training actually makes sense. Now, these drills are also going to carry over into the regular season as part of weekly strategy. So you choose your game plans as you have in the last couple games, and you're going to have a chance to play through those mini games, and all of them are going to be available, and you can choose the 3 players that you want to take part in those drills. The XP you get from weekly strategy is significantly lower, and in the article it mentions this is essentially used as a modifier for that player's bonus focus XP. So we'll see how much XP they're getting in weekly strategy and how much these mini games actually play a part in that. The next thing we get to is trades, and we have seen that there are now 6 trade slots available for either side of the trade. One thing I saw in the trailer is that you now have the ability to trade draft picks up to 3 years into the future, which gives you more options for trading like loads of first round picks for a key player or to move up in the draft, and it makes trading for superstars a lot more interesting when you can include more than just 3 players or picks. Now, introducing this means that they're going to have to make a lot of adjustments to their trade logic, and that's been a big problem for a very long time. And as much as they'll talk about it every year, there are a lot of the same problems that occur. I think that players in the 70s carry way too much trade value when teams are asking for 3rd or 4th round picks when they should go for 6s and 7s in most cases. And then you have teams that also undervalue some of their solid, more cornerstone players and allow you to trade like 277 overalls, and they act like that's actually getting a decent return. So now you introduce more possibilities and 6 slots per side. I think that increases the amount of work they have to do to make this logic sound. And, you know, I haven't really seen trade logic I like in Madden's. I wonder how this is really going to play out when the game launches. Now, one thing I do really like that they are introducing is a trade difficulty slider. I saw this in the settings later in the trailer, and that is immediately something that catches my attention because I think trades should be significantly more difficult if that's the experience you're looking for. In the article, they do mention that as far as draft pick value, they wanted to start replicating the draft pick charts, like the Jimmy Johnson draft pick board that we hear about all the time. And I think that as a baseline, that's a good way to start determining the value of picks, and at least I think it puts it in a much better spot if that's what they're following. I think the issue, though, comes down to equating draft pick value to player value. So how much really is a 78 overall, 28-year-old running back? How do you determine that value when you're talking about picks in return versus players? It's kind of 2 different values that you have to have right in order for this to really work together. They did introduce a trade finder last year, the Get Offers button you can press. And they did do an update for Madden 24 where you're able to counter offer when you see a package that you might be intrigued by, and then you can adjust it to your liking, and that can be a little shortcut to finding a deal that works for you. Now, these features are ultimately not really what excites me. What does excite me is something I've been asking for. Just give us sliders and options within the commissioner settings so we can start to tailor the experience in the direction that we want. And these are the kinds of things that make a big deal in my kind of series where I'm trying to be more realistic and I want the league to play out in a more immersive way, and I need different things to occur for, you know, the in-game economy to make sense and for player progression to make sense. First off, depth chart reordering. This was an annoying issue that cost me probably hours of time in Madden 23. Anytime you'd add a player to a roster, make a trade, make any type of signing, it would reorder your depth chart. And you know in football, it's not all about just having the highest overall at every spot. You want young guys to get playing time. You want a certain guy in the slot. You want different players as sub-linebacker than are starting. And it would ruin it every time. And there are so many spots on the depth chart, it would take just way too long. So now you can turn off depth chart reordering. The next thing you're able to do is edit the draft class strength. And I kind of like this as a balancer inside a franchise because as you do drafts, you probably notice that there are certain positions that are seemingly strong every single year. Like 5 or 6 first-round receivers year after year. And I get we're in a time in the NFL where it seems like that's kind of normal. Receivers are flying off the boards early, but it's nice to be able to go into Madden and say, you know what? Maybe we've had too many strong classes in this area. We're just going to tone it down for balance purposes. So in your league settings tab, you can edit the strength for every position, and you can either make them normal, weak, very weak, or strong, or very strong. If your league needs an influx of talent at a certain spot, offensive line is one of those where I tend to think that not enough good offensive linemen are in drafts. I think it got better in Madden 23, but for many years it's been hard to see like really good offensive linemen enter and truly replace the elites that are currently in the league, leading to, you know, really weak free agent pools, and just the domino effects that happen when certain things aren't balanced are really apparent the deeper you get into franchise. So I really like being able to edit the draft class strength. It does mention here in the article that setting one of these to very strong will create more top-tier prospects, and the chances of seeing a generational is 10 times higher than on normal. On very weak, the opposite is true, where generationals won't even have a chance to appear, and the other top tiers will have an extremely low chance. As an example, they generated 30 classes on each setting, and with every position set to very strong, draft classes saw an average of nearly 1080 overall prospects per draft. With every position set to very weak, there were a total of 580 overall prospects over all 30 classes. So if you don't like generational prospects, or if you want just amazing rookies to come in, now you got more control over how you want your franchise to unfold. And I really like this addition. Offensive and defensive play call settings. Previously, cooldowns and play call limits were a universal setting applied to both offense and defense, and this time around they're going to be independent. I think that makes a lot more sense because, honestly, I could go into a game with 5 defensive plays. I don't need any more than that. Give me a 4-3 and a nickel cover 3, like a cover 1 man, and then like a cover 2 and a cover 6, and I don't need anything else, honestly. Fantasy draft order can now be edited, and you can choose to also make it a snake draft, which, if you play a lot of fantasy football, you probably prefer snake drafting, and I think it is significantly better, which means that the order will reverse after the first round, meaning this would make it so the team that picks last in the first round then picks first in the second round. And that creates a lot more balance. It also means the team that picks number 1 won't pick again until number 64. The next setting is free agent motivations impact. So if you don't like the motivations here for free agency and player signing, you can adjust these or turn them off. If you raise the impact, which is what I would want to do, it would make it easier to sign players with high interest, but more difficult to sign players with lower interest. Lowering the impact makes it easier to sign players with low interest, but reduces the effects of players having high interest. I would hope that at the hardest setting here, that it would make it so players with 0 interest literally won't sign, but I wonder if they'll actually go that far. I do like overall having the free agent motivations, and I think I want those to be pretty strong in anything that I do. But I do worry about like high motivation. I don't want to get those guys for just like a super cheap contract. I really want it to just make sure that players with low motivation are really difficult to re-sign. And you truly have like a situation where a player doesn't want to be there and there's like no way to keep him around. Trade difficulty has a slider with easy and very easy, reducing the value needed for a trade to complete. Hard and very hard will raise it. Never seen Madden have a trade difficulty slider. I think that is very nice. Most of the time in my franchises, I'm just trying to do trades that I feel like make sense, but it would be a lot nicer to just have logic that makes it so I don't have to worry about that personal balancing. Home field advantage, you can turn that on or off, and turning this off will turn off the home field advantage as well as all M factors, and a lot of those are super gimmicky. You know, the Vikings have an M factor where if they unlock it, they become faster in the red zone, and there are just some that are just goofy and I don't really like. There are right and wrong ways, I think, to create home field advantage and to try and capture the idea of momentum, and what they've done to me doesn't do it right at all. Progression and regression sliders. This is maybe my favorite thing in the entire update here. Age-based progression sliders, in addition to position-based ones. This is going to create a lot of customization, and I'm really excited about the things that I'm going to try to do in my future franchises. So I noticed in the settings that it seems that the regression is for ages like 30 and up. I'm not sure if like 28, 29 are included, but I think this is one of the biggest things that comes into franchise this year if you want to do the editing. You know, I think about situations in Madden that just don't make sense compared to real life, and the big one to me is running backs. You know, it's typical in the NFL to see guys play well for 3 to 6 years, and then, you know, they start to decline, get replaced, and the cycle continues with the next young crop of running backs. And what you see in Madden instead is dynasty running backs, essentially. These guys play forever. Their ratings stay high, they don't regress very quickly, and they start at a high level into their mid to late 30s. What I want to do is really tank their ratings once they start to regress, so you can start to see draft picks actually get playing time. And if you can have high regression sliders, you can then have high progression sliders, meaning that you can have young guys developing really quickly while old guys regress super quickly. And then you're actually going to see young running backs develop, take over jobs, and have that more immersive running back market and everything else. So I love the idea of progression and regression sliders and having much deeper control based on age, and I'm just really excited about this feature. There are so many things I've wanted to see brought to franchise, and regression and progression is one of those things that I think everybody wants something a little different, and giving us the sliders and the control rather than just trying to tune it in a universal sense, I think is a significantly better option and will yield a lot better results. So that is something I'm very excited to play around with when the game drops. And as someone who just wants to play a fun long-term franchise, you know, you need the free agency classes to make sense. You need young players to take over roles and develop quickly. And you need these veterans to regress and finish out the cycle of an NFL career. The draft timer can now be turned on or off, and I usually just pause that anyway, as I don't want to be on the clock actually, so that's an option now in the settings. And draft generators, I thought they did a really good job in 23 of improving just the prospect pool in general. I was seeing like third round offensive linemen with good enough ratings to start. Generational prospects I think have been a ton of fun. I've landed a couple in my series, and it's been just a big thing for generating interest and having something fun and unique. A player you gotta take early that can make a huge difference. And it looks like they've done even more this year, adding 50 new generators to the mix for more variety and dynamic and memorable draft experiences. This year, there will be generational prospects available at every single position, with new prospects across the offensive line, fullback, tight end, defensive end, safety, and even punter. These prospects come into the league ready to start immediately with the highest possible depth trait for their position. The other thing, too, is 99 club prospects. This is something else I saw in Madden 23, and there's going to be more of them this year. And I don't think they necessarily have to be 99 to achieve this goal, but the idea that a guy can come in and maybe he's like an average slot receiver but happens to have 99 spec catch, I do think that's pretty cool. I drafted a guy with that skill set basically in Madden 23, and it's cool to have that personality. At the same time, I've seen 99 speed receivers who have like 70 catching, and having those more boom or bust skill sets, I think, adds to what we love about the draft and building teams in the first place. It says here to be on the lookout for new running back prospects with top end break tackle and injury, wide receivers with 99 juke, guards with 99 impact block, or a perfectly hydrated hitting machine at linebacker with 99 hit power. And I think we all know what high hit power has done in recent Maddens. Utility prospects. They've added some quarterback generators this year with receiver attributes or tight end attributes. Some other ones include corners who can also have receiver skills, and defensive tackles who can also possess some ball carrier skills. And you've been able to play D tackles at fullback, so that's where I think that comes into play. And then they have injury-prone prospects, and if you watch my Titans franchise, you know that's definitely already in the game. So maybe they are emphasizing that more, but I've taken a number of injury-prone players in the Titans franchise, and they've all gotten hurt and missed a lot of games. They've also adjusted the weight and frequency at which each archetype can generate at each position. I did feel like there were way too many recurring body types, and I've wanted to see more variety there, especially like power backs. They have had like the same skill set here for so long. They have tuned the college selection for top tier quarterbacks, so it's going to be more big schools and less of the like Delaware quarterbacks. Shout out Joe Flacco. Normalized all prospects to a default morale to prevent any rating changes when viewing players following the draft. That makes sense. And adjusted generators to accommodate the new jersey number rules. I do think that the stuff I just talked about is my favorite updates coming to franchise mode, and just having more options to tailor the experience and the long-term impact that can have. That is one of the big things I've been wanting to see. But I've also wanted to see them improve the relocation experience. It still does not appear to be on the level of, say, 2K, where they have an entire expansion mode where you can add multiple teams to a league. You still have to relocate a team here in Madden, but it does look like it's going to have a bit of a refresh this year. They've added some new uniforms, they've added new cities, and you can relocate while playing as a coach, which in the past you've only been able to relocate if you play as an owner. You can select your new city, team branding, and stadium immediately after choosing to relocate. Once you select your stadium, your relocation will be completed, and you'll be in your new city with your new team, and you're able to relocate again when the next season starts. They've added 15 new cities, so they have 34 total. And here are the new cities. You got Albuquerque, New Mexico, Anchorage, Alaska. I'm not going to list them all, but we have more options. The way names and logos work has also been updated. Previously, each city had 3 name choices, and now name choices are no longer tied to the city, rather being available no matter where you move. The Oilers, however, remain exclusive to Houston. There are now over 90 plus uniforms that have been entirely refreshed, and previously you would select a uniform set and only have access to that home and away uniform. Now selecting a logo choice lets you access the unique home, away, and alternates for that logo. This will allow 9 uniform combinations per team. I don't think that means there's 9 unique uniforms per team. I think it's just the combinations you can put together. Overall, I think this is a welcome change for relocation. It's been the same for I don't even know how many years, so just having more control there I think is a big plus, but I'd still like to see a true expansion mode. Forget career mode. The ultimate career mode you could put into this game would be creating an expansion team and taking over a fresh new franchise in the NFL. We're not done yet. We got salary cap management. And 5th-year options have already been in the game. They do mention that here, but contract restructuring is now in the game. So what that is going to do, it seems to be very basic. Like the contracts in real life do get pretty complex with roster bonuses and void years, incentives. It seems that it's still going to be pretty basic, and the basic restructuring is going to take that current year's salary, reduce it, and then distribute it over the remaining years. So it's going to give you a short-term salary cap reduction, and you'll pay that price then later at the end, as teams do all the time now in the NFL. Most contracts are made, it seems, knowing that eventually there'll be a restructure or a player will not actually finish out the deal. And when there is a restructure, oftentimes those players do get cut with a big penalty at the very end. Look at players like Adam Thielen this past year. I don't think there's anything as far as a June 1st designation where you can spread over a cap hit over multiple years or eat it in 1 year. So there's still a lot of depth that contracts need. This is a very small step to me. In order to restructure a contract, a player has to have multiple years remaining, so you're not making just void years out of nowhere like they do these days in the NFL. For the 5th-year option, this is where you select a player in the first round. After year 3, you then make a call if you want to pick up their 5th-year option or if you want them to become a free agent after their 4th season. And there is a condition in here that determines their contract value for that option based on whether or not they've made a Pro Bowl, which would increase the money they would make. Now, in the past, the 5th-year option was just tied to a scenario, and that meant the CPU didn't have a chance to offer 5th-year options to their teams. So now 5th-year options are integrated into the re-sign system, so the CPU can also take advantage of this, which is nice to even the odds there. Next up, we got player value and logic improvements. And this goes over basically how that they have made it so CPU teams will better identify key players and make better decisions when it comes to who to re-sign. And it just seemed to me like in the past, they just looked at who was like looking at the biggest contract, basically who was the highest overall player, and just tried to re-sign those guys in order of largest contract to smallest. And that would lead to, you know, signing a bunch of old guys at a certain position and letting certain guys slip through the cracks that they really shouldn't have. One thing here it mentions is that they've also made the decision to unlock all players early in the season to give you the option to re-sign any and all players right away. So you no longer have to wait till later in the year to re-sign players who are under like an 82 overall or so. The coaching staff has received a small update as there's now talent tree expansion. Head coaches, coordinators, and player personnel now feature 3 talent trees as opposed to 2. And what I saw that I liked is that the coordinators are now going to see a lot more trees that are based on a certain position group. So an offensive coordinator who has a tree dedicated to helping out receivers or a different position. And that allows you to make decisions on coaching based on what you need to develop the most, really. And that is the bulk of the information here in the franchise deep dive for Madden 24. Overall, I feel like there are some pretty good things here. The training camp to me is nice to see. Obviously, it's nostalgic. I grew up playing that. I think that it's going to be a nice novelty at first, but not be like a huge long-term, like big deal for the mode. It's just going to be a nice little tertiary piece of franchise. Ultimately, to me, the biggest thing is trade logic. Where are we at with that? But the commissioner tools you're going to get for trade sliders, regression sliders, draft class sliders, that to me is where the biggest difference in franchise is this year. And if you're underwhelmed by that, then, you know, are the training camp drills enough for you? Is everything else going to make up for it? There's still obviously a lot I'd love to see come to Madden 24, but in terms of these commissioner options, that's probably one of my favorite additions in a long time, because I know the impact that's going to make in my kind of experience. Just as XP sliders have been a welcome addition, I think more control like this is ultimately going to make a huge difference. At the end of the day, I find franchise to be at its most fun when it's replicating what we see in real life as much as possible, and when the CPU is building strong teams and making smart decisions. And once we get into Madden 24, I'll be testing out a lot of these things and sharing my findings here on the channel. And eventually, we're going to have some new franchise content. And the stuff in here today does make me excited to check it out. Tell me what you think down below. Are you underwhelmed, or are you excited to play around with these changes to franchise mode? Is this enough for you this year? Let me know what you think down below. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see franchise content here on Madden 24. You can check out my Madden 23 franchise with the Tennessee Titans in the meantime. And I will see you all in the next video. Have a great day.